this here is the Landing Vehicle Tracked 4, LVP4, LVT4, also called Amtrak. It's used mostly by the Marines for amphibious operations in the Pacific. So you can see the tracks right here helped it be able to go through the water and crawl over coral and sand. It was designed in the 1930s to be able to move through the Florida Everglades. The Marines saw it in an ad in Life magazine and said, "Hey, we'd like to use that." Here we have a Higgins landing craft vehicle personnel. This is General Eisenhower referred to Andrew Higgins, who designed this boat, as one of the men who won the war. This basically made large-scale amphibious operations possible. And then next to it, we have the Duck. It was called as the Duck, D-U-K-W. It's basically built by taking a 2.5-ton truck chassis and then putting a boat and cargo area on it. And then we have the Jeep version of it over here, which I think was also featured in an episode of Pawn Stars. So we've got some very early model trucks and support vehicles here. This is a International Harvester M14 truck. This is used mostly by the Marines, many of which were converted into ambulances later. This here, the VC1 command car. This is a very early model.
I get that this screams command car. This screams command car. This feels like very fancy. But it said they also used it for reconnaissance, and I just wonder how surreptitious could you be in a big old car like
that? not exactly built for stealth, is it?
That's what I mean.
And then we have the enclosed ambulance. The signature ambulance from World War II, and I believe of MASH. I feel like we saw a lot of these in MASH. Here we have the US M3 light tank Stuart and the Japanese Hago. These tanks encountered, not these specific ones, obviously, but these tanks encountered each other in the Philippines in 1941, December 1941. Many of these earlier Stuart tanks were given to the British in North Africa in 1941. The British then nicknamed them honeys because they're apparently so sweet to drive and ride in. The Japanese Hago, developed by Mitsubishi. I wonder if they're still making those. The Japanese never really built heavy tanks. And this was known as the Type 97 tankette. They basically made these so that they could quickly support their forces in China. It was never intended for tank-on-tank action. Okay. Here we have the a Jeep modified by the British SAS. Basically what they do is they would cut down and remove all possible parts and such from it so that you could carry more equipment and supplies with it. And it is quite heavily armed, as you can see. This one has 4 machine guns mounted on it.
So my grandfather was a World War II vet and Pearl Harbor survivor, and was taught in part how to be a mechanic um, in in World War II. So he was a mechanic in World War II, and this whatever this was, whatever this thing that they learned to strip them down stayed with him, because he would work on my Honda Civic and he would still be like having a little pile of parts after he was done with it that were like, you don't need this, you don't need this, you don't need this. So stayed with them.
Okay, so now we're here in the very early days of World War II. So this is the North African campaign. So we saw the SAS Jeep over there. Here we have, this is called the M7 Priest. And what this was a self-propelled gun, or basically an artillery piece that is mounted on its own chassis. So this was nicknamed the Priest because of the pulpit up there for the vehicle commander. So this is basically an artillery piece that would have had its own mount on it. Over here we have a very early model of American tank, the M3 Grant. Actually, American manufacturing could not make turrets to hold larger guns, so this was the makeshift.
They couldn't?
This was the makeshift temporary fix until we could get the industrial capacity to make larger turrets. So that's why the gun is mounted in the hull.
Oh my gosh.
Right there. You also notice, again, early technology is you can see that it is held together by rivets instead of being welded. This is bad because when it would get hit by tank shells, or by enemy fire, the rivets would break and bounce around inside the tank.
That's bad.
Which is bad.
You just created some shrapnel.
Right. So this is a monster tank. It was crewed by 7 people. The M3 half track. You guess why it's called a half track? It's because it has front wheels and the back half was like a tank tracks. More than 53,000 of these were manufactured during the war. And you basically saw them stop immediately after the war.
What else are you going to use them for?
Well, the military could still, I guess the military found they're just too big. And so they went to all tracked vehicles, I'm sure, some of which we'll see examples on later. And then we have yet another ambulance. And then over here, the dreaded German 88. It was originally designed as an anti-aircraft gun, and to basically be able to reach the very high altitudes for the artillery shells. So it had an incredibly high velocity gun, and then the Germans found out that it worked really, really well against tanks. Okay. All right, we're about to enter the rotunda of American combat vehicles. You can see this is quite the impressive display, which I think will start over here. Again, we saw the half track earlier. This is a mortar carrier version. So you can see there in the back the mortar tube, but right here you can specifically see just in the ammunition stowage area right here. The original design called for them to remove the mortar through the rear door and to fire it from the ground. So then they redesigned that, which takes a much longer time. So they redesigned it to be able to fire from the rear. Although some of the crews didn't like that, and apparently a lot of crews redesigned it to be able to fire forward. And then we have some anti-aircraft versions. It's right here with a single 40mm mount and actually a rotating turret. So they actually replaced the rear crew compartment with a rotating turret. The M15, they ultimately it had too many recoil problems and instability, so they did not use it. This is just a test vehicle. This right here was they decided to modify to a 37 millimeter and twin 50 caliber machine guns. So this was used early on. A crew of 7. That's crowded. Okay, and we get back to the another anti-aircraft version over here. This was the M16. This was the latest version right here. 4 Browning 50 caliber machine guns, called it the Quad 50s. There's actually a ground mount version of this as well, where they took that turret with the 450s and mounted it onto a trailer. You can actually see this, I want to say the ground mount version, in one of the episodes of Band of Brothers. I believe it's episode 9.
Oh.
And I skipped over this here. This is the infantry version of it. So this is basically used to carry infantrymen or an infantry squad.
Okay, that had 12 passengers in it. That is crowded.
Yes. 12 passengers. 1 driver and 12 passengers. Yeah, I'm sure you were pretty much shoulder to shoulder in that sucker, weren't you? So we have the M32 recovery vehicle.
The AAA of tanks.
Yes. And your tank broke, you call it AAA, which was this guy. Let's see, I can't quite tell if that turret, it looks like that turret is fixed, but I'm not 100% sure. But you can see if we go around here, yeah, that turret is definitely fixed. So not a turret, I guess. But you can definitely see all the repair equipment, the oxygen tank for both welding torches, the big crane right there for being able to lift out engines or lift off turrets. If you're wondering why the tracks look very similar, it's because it uses the same track as most of the other M4 Shermans and a very similar hull. But you can see it's all got all kinds of extra tools and parts attached to it. You can see up there in the middle the smoke grenade launchers. And then we have a much earlier, the M31 recovery vehicle. As you recall, you can see this is based off of that the M3 Grant from just earlier. It was designed with a fake gun to fool the enemy into thinking that it was not a rare and expensive recovery vehicle.
They don't think the big old tower on it gave it away?
Apparently not.
Okay.
Yes, because you see the fake gun, but not the massive crane on it.
I feel like you'd see the crane first.
I'd see the crane. I think that crane's kind of obvious. But still, you don't see a lot of museums with the recovery and maintenance vehicles in them. So these are some pretty cool examples. All right, so we're going to move on here to some of the artillery pieces. This is 75 millimeter pack howitzer. So this is basically a man-portable, designed to be able to be transported by horses or mules, sometimes delivered by parachute or by glider. Of course, it would be multiple as 9 separate containers called paracrates. Problem was that you lost one container and then you couldn't put the gun together.
Face the same thing sometimes with my puzzles when the cats eat a piece.
Yeah. So earlier we had the airborne version of the 105 millimeter howitzer, and so here we have the normal version. This being the M10. They call it a gun motor carriage, which is an interesting phraseology there.
Let me just say, anybody looking at this would say it's a tank.
Yes. What's hard to see from this angle here is that it doesn't have a roof.
Oh, okay. That explains that.
Yes. And you can see it's while it shares a lot of similarities with the chassis, you can see it is actually with the actual tracks and suspension, but the hull is particularly the top half of the hull is very different. So this is a significantly lighter version of the version, but significantly lighter vehicle compared to the M4 Shermans, which we'll see here in a second.
Well, sure, anybody can see that.
Yeah. But this was basically they put a bigger, better gun than the Sherman had on it, but as to compensate, they had to significantly reduce the armor protection.
Oh.
So this was very fast, but much lighter. Okay. Moving on to the M18 Hellcat, gun motor carriage, and over here the M36. So these are both fairly similar vehicles. The M18 Hellcat was incredibly fast. It says a road speed of 60 miles an hour, which for a 39,000-pound vehicle built in 1945 is pretty quick. So this was actually designed from the ground up. They didn't use any other parts from other vehicles.
Huh.
So unlike the other, you can see the other ones, you can see the suspension
Yeah.
is going to be the same as on the Sherman tanks. But this has a unique suspension all of its own. And again, maintained the open top turret to save weight. These are not designed necessarily to fight. These are designed to kill tanks, but were not really designed for tank on tank, if that makes sense. They had very light armor, so they're designed to be just basically very fast and mobile, and fighting more from ambush than straight on fighting. See, we had the M36, called the Jackson. So these first showed up in late 1944, where they mounted a 90 millimeter anti-aircraft gun. It was actually the only gun that could handle some of the latest German tanks. And these were continued to use into the Korean War.
So this is an M3A1 scout car. This looks like a reconnaissance car.
Yeah.
Like, it's armored, it looks fast, it looks stealthy. It does not look like we're taking the family to brunch after church. Like, that makes sense to me.
Well, apparently it had some severe flaws.
Okay, so I was wrong.
Yeah, it did not perform very well off-road. It was overly heavy, probably underpowered. An open top, which is not great when shells are going off overhead. So we made 21,000 of them, but we gave away half of them to our allies.
We're like, here, this doesn't work. Would you like it?
It's not really working for us. Why don't you guys have it? So we'll move on here to the M8 Scout car. They intended to replace some of the earlier anti-tank vehicles we saw earlier, where they kept the 37 millimeter. But again, we rapidly found out in 1942 that this gun couldn't do anything.
Huh.
So they went ahead and just upgraded right here to the M20. You can see here next to it, where they basically just took off the cannon and put a 50 caliber on there instead. But as you can tell, a lot of these they use basically a truck chassis. So they took the suspension and tires from a truck and just built an armored shell on top of it. Carried 6 soldiers.
No.
Which seems, well, they really just described the hull as cramped. So there's that. So move over here, the M22 Locust. This is a fairly rare version right here. So this was designed to be dropped in a glider. Originally designed to be deployed by airplane, with the turret and hull separate. which apparently you can install it in 20 minutes, they say.
If you have both parts.
Yeah, yeah. They later deployed it by glider. And again, we say it's like they're just like the economy just seems to love this 37 millimeter, even though we found out in 1942 that it didn't work on anything.
And still in 1944, we're like, hey, let's make some more.
Let's make a tank with this gun on it. Still, let's keep doing it. That makes sense. The very early version right here, the M3. Fun fact right here. You see the little circle right over there on the left side of the hull?
Yeah. Yeah.
The very first versions of that actually mounted 2 machine guns in the hull that the driver could shoot.
That seems wildly inefficient.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see that's why they took them out.
Yeah.
But this right here that the Marines made a flamethrower version of it.
Sure they did.
That they called Satan.
Sure they did.
They would often keep the same. They would keep the tank barrel. They would actually spray the napalm out through the tank barrel, the gun barrel. Yeah. And so we have the upgraded version right here, the M5. So the early M3 actually used a radial engine, which basically is an airplane engine.
Oh. Okay.
So it's why it made it really fast. But as the war ramped up, they're like, well, we need to save the radial engines for airplanes.
Okay. Yeah.
So they switched over to a diesel engine. So you can really see the differences in the turret right here. How much larger and better armored the turret is.
Yeah.
And the hull, for that matter. And then we have the final, the M24 chassis. Chaffee. I keep wanting to say chassis.
Mm-hmm.
So did not see a lot of these in the war. They basically were fielded in late 1944, and they were first used in the Battle of the Bulge. So they upgraded it to a 75 millimeter gun, but it was still not good enough for anti-tank warfare. It was basically a support gun, if you will. It's still quite fast. So here we have is one of the first models of the Sherman. It's the M4A1 Sherman. Over 50,000 various models of Sherman tank were manufactured during the war. This is one of the earlier models. This is the one has a cast hull, which you can see by the rounded edges. While this did provide better support, it was, I want to say, it was more difficult to make because of the casting involved. So the later models would have welded, more angular hulls, as we'll see coming up. So again, this is armed with a short-barreled 75 millimeter gun, which was good against light armored vehicles and fortifications, but was severely lacking against other tanks. I'm gonna edit that out. All right. Now here we have a later model M4 Sherman. You can see some of the differences from the previous one with the angled welded hull. Additional armor plating there in front of the crew compartment. And you can see some of the added armor plating welded onto the side for the crew, and on the other side for the engine compartment, or the ammunition storage.
It could be that thing.
Where was ammunition stored in this?
In the hull, mostly. As a matter of fact. Okay, and so this was basically this is the M4A3E8 Sherman, also called the Easy 8. This was the latest version of the Sherman.
It's like its final form.
This was its final form. Yes, boss mode, if you will. So you can actually, if you compare this to the M4 over here, you can really see the noticeable differences in the chassis and the suspension. You can see how significantly different they are. And also you can note is the much longer gun barrel,
Yeah.
which that is a 76 millimeter, more high velocity cannon than the lower velocity 75 on the earlier model Sherman. You can also see the armor is a little bit thicker, and you can definitely see it on the turret. You can definitely see how much larger the armor is on the turret. The crews would often use improvised armor. For example, sandbags, as you can see right here, and they also put other supplies and stuff like that on the front to help protect it. Other crews they also would put extra slabs of steel or concrete was even used on several things. And there's some pictures available of that. So again, going back, you can see some of these trucks in the Band of Brothers series, for example. As you see a number of these trucks when they're moving Easy Company up to Bastogne. So you can see that these several models of these trucks dropping the soldiers off. And as a nod to the Red Ball Express, they have African American drivers. So then the classic deuce and a half or 2.5 ton truck. Although it could, by regulation, you were authorized to load it up to 5 tons, although 5.5 tons was normal during the Red Ball Express, and some loads were clocked at over 7 tons. Then we have a tractor trailer fuel version right here. And here we have a map of the Red Ball Express. So we have the original version here in solid, and then as it expanded out. So one of the things the Germans did was destroy the port of Calais.
Yes.
And so for months the Allies were forced to bring all of their supplies on over the beach.
Lunch or snack at the canteen. I don't think this was here the last time that we were.
I don't know, that wasn't open.
Yeah,
I
it
don't think.
wasn't open the last time that we were here. So yeah, I've got some tots. You got a Sherman burger.
Yeah, yep. All the burger meals are named after tanks. Well, because that's what you do.
Yeah, absolutely, that's what you do.
All right.
We're gonna dig in.
Okay. We're here in the great big hollow trucks, as I've called it.
It represents the Red Ball Express.
Yes. Which is basically when the Allies broke out of Normandy and were rampaging across France, and they rapidly outran their usual supply lines. And so the army organized the Red Ball Express, which is actually made mostly of African American units. And basically, the idea was a constant stream of trucks to keep the U.S. forces supplied, mostly with their fuel,
Yeah.
but with ammunition and other stuff as well.
As you always say, it's always about logistics.
It's always logistics. So here we have a Autocar U7144, the Autocar company. That sounds fake.
That is a completely fake company.
I have never, I've literally never heard of the name before. I assume it went out of business after the war.
I'm guessing it did, yeah.
I assume? I don't know, but they had some pretty good times in before because apparently they built a lot of them. So these were early model tractor trailer trucks, which were much preferred method of delivery because you could drive the truck forward, drop off the trailer, it could get reloaded,
Yeah.
at will, if you will. You're gonna edit that out, right? Yeah, we'll totally edit that out. We won't. So we can, but you can drop the trailer and then the truck can immediately leave.
Right.
And then
moving faster because
right,
there's nothing in it.
because you don't have the truck and the
truck.
driver aren't sitting there waiting for somebody to unload it. You can just drop it and go. So the early models had enclosed cabs. The later models, they took the cab off to save steel and also save height when you're shipping by boat.
Yeah, so they were just like duck, I guess.
Yep. So And we got some lesser known trucks. These are basically versions of the classic Deuce and a Half, but manufactured by GMC. So this one, for example, has a much longer cargo bed, but this was actually a problem because we tended to fill it to its limit and not its weight capacity.
Mm-hmm.
With the much larger bed, it actually had caused it a lot of mechanical problems later on. And so here we have a troop carrier version right here. It's interesting to note how much lower to the ground the troop carrier versions are compared to the cargo ones. And I don't know why that would be.
Yeah, they are much lower though.
It is noticeably lower. We have a smaller version.
Those comfy, completely
Yep.
wood benches.
Yep. They look totally fine. So these are actually fairly common. They built 180,000 of them. But you don't really hear or see much about it.
No.
It's always the Jeep and the Deuce and a Half.
I feel like those are the iconic ones
They
because there
are,
were so many
yeah.
and they were so. I think this one is fascinating.
Hmm.
So this is the WC-40 truck, and the reason I find this so fascinating is this was kind of a precursor to the Deuce and a Half, but they literally made 275 of them, and one of them is here. I just find that fascinating.
Yeah. It's not exactly it's like, oh, let's save this rare truck. But the fact that they've got one here at at the museum is pretty incredible. So here we have some more. These are more the iconic Deuce and a Half trucks right here. Okay, and we've got some more great rare examples of stuff. So this is an air compressor truck. You kind of forget the some very specialized requirements for vehicles for repairs and other things like that, because you'll power air tools, inflating pontoons, inflating tires. So here they kind of the logistics for the logistics. So we got some like repair trucks and tow trucks and such right here. And then over here we have a bridge truck. So this truck carried parts of pontoon bridges. This truck. This truck right here carried parts for pontoon bridges. We come up to some motorcycles. So these are Indians. So Indian motorcycles right here. So this is an early version right here. The 640B, basically a militarized sport scout. And then we move up here. This was actually specifically designed for North Africa. So they use a shaft drive instead of a chain drive, because chain drives would get really worn out in the desert because of all the dust and sand. And then we have this one with a much larger, a 30.5 cubic inch engine. So during World War I, the Indians were the U.S. military's favorite motorcycle. By 1941, Harley Davidson had surpassed that. So we have some Harley Davidsons over here. Let's get the camera over. Here we are. So Harley Davidson WLA, the widely produced Liberator. This is the most produced motorcycle of World War II.
It could go through 18 inches of water.
That's
impressive. A lot of
That's
water.
a lot of water. That's a foot and a half. That is a lot. So they made, it says right here, they made 60,000 motorcycles, of which 56,000 were this model.
Wow.
These were made through the Korean War. And we have the UA, so built with a sidecar. There are not that many of these. Looks like only about 1,000 or so.